All right, hello everyone. We are going to get started. We have a few folks still funneling in, so go ahead and take your virtual seat. We're going to go ahead and begin. I want to thank all of you for joining today, wherever you are in the world. We're so delighted to have you. My name is Jennifer Morse. I'm the Director of Customer Success here at MadCap Software. And joining me today is my wonderful guest, Kenda Wachter, Documentation and Translation Technology Consultant for Flinkso in Belgium. Now, Ken teaches terminology practices and technical authoring to students at KU Leuven, which is Belgium's largest university and also one of the oldest universities in Europe. And he also consults and trains professional translators and technical communicators. Now, he's currently working with a team at Collibra in Brussels, where, along with his team of writers, a lot of user documentation is created to support a complex and comprehensive software platform. And since they follow a fast-paced agile development cycle, his team needs to be consistent, in sync, and smart about content reuse, since they need to support different user types, licensing models, and overlapping functionality. So today, Ken is going to share how using Flare, specifically using snippets, conditions, and variables, can easily come together to ensure that we all maximize content reuse. And I always come away from Ken's presentations with little pearls of information, so I am so honored to welcome him today. Now, as always, we have a lot to cover. So 2 quick items of business that I always like to remind everybody before we begin. This webinar will be recorded and a copy of it will be sent out to everyone who has registered. So look for that in the coming days. It takes us a little bit to render. And then also, there is a question panel in the GoToWebinar console. So please, if you have a question that you want to ask that comes up during the presentation, please drop it in that questions area. We're going to do our best to get to all of the questions. We may not be able to get to all of them, but not to worry, keep them coming. We'll be following up with a question and answer document along with the webinar recording and all of the slides after the fact. So please keep those questions coming. So again, with that, Ken, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so happy to have you. I know you've got a lot to cover, so I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Okay. Wow, thanks a lot, Jennifer, for that very impressive and kind introduction. Like you said, my name is Ken, and I'm currently mainly working as a technical writer at Collibra. Usually, I'm based in Brussels, but because of the COVID-19 outbreak, I'm now based in my home office in the middle of my children's toys and Lego blocks. I'm glad to see that the turnout for this webinar is so high. I think it really shows resilience and that our community is taking the opportunity to rethink the ways in which we work. And I'm sure that when all of this is over, we'll come out stronger and we will be working more efficiently. What I'm going to do today is have a look at the way that we at Collibra handle single sourcing without losing flexibility and agility, basically. Most of you will have heard of the 3 main ways of dealing with consistency, of dealing with single sourcing, which are variables and snippets, and then using conditions to sort of alter the content where needed. To do this, I have a very simple PowerPoint with some definitions and links, but I'll also be showing everything live in a simplified MadCap Flare project. I know this is taunting the demo gods, because usually when you try to show something live, something goes wrong that otherwise always goes perfectly. But I'll give it a try anyways. So this is my MadCap Flare project. I have some very simple topics on some Microsoft products. So I have, for example, a very basic topic on Microsoft Word, which with some content I took from the internet. Same for PowerPoint and Excel. And I currently have one task topic on how to make text bold in MS Word. During this session, I will gradually start adding content, adding topics that overlap significantly. For example, making text bold in PowerPoint. So we're gonna reuse a lot of this content, but at the same time, when and where necessary, we want to be able to deviate from sort of our fixed content. Okay, let's switch back to my PowerPoint. There we are, and have a look at the first concept that we're gonna use. Variables. I hope most of you are already using variables. It's a very easy way to sort of reuse and maintain short piece of information. Variables are typically very, very short. We're talking about a product name or product version or a date. We're not talking about bigger things such as tables or images, mainly because variables are always plain text. They can't contain formatting. Now, obviously, you can insert them into topics, even one or more topics. That's exactly the point, so that you can have throughout your documentation, reuse the same variable and then keep that information consistent. Let's have a look at my project and see where I currently use variables. So you'll see that if I open my Microsoft Word documentation, you see here this topic contains some text with gray background. These are variables. Now, variables are handled centrally, so you create your variables centrally, but then you can start adding them to topics. To create new variables, you go to the project organizer. In the variables folder, you have sets of variables. Currently, I only have one, general, but I could create as many as I want. In my general variable set, at this point, I have 3 variables. I have a variable called spreadsheet, which is defined as Microsoft Excel, Suite, Microsoft Office, Word Processor, and Microsoft Word. The name of the variable will not be visible in any output. So this is just for your own internal management, that you can give this a name which means something to you. I'll quickly add another one because I notice I have Excel and Word, but I don't have PowerPoint yet. So I'll just create a new one. I'll give it the name presentation tool, for example, with the definition Microsoft PowerPoint. There you are. Save, and that's it. Now, going back to my topics, in my Microsoft Word topic, you see that Microsoft Word as a snippet is used consistently, which means that the name of my product will also be used consistently. MS Excel also uses Microsoft Excel consistently, or Microsoft Office as a suite. If I look at PowerPoint, this is a typical example of where things could go wrong. This is plain text, Microsoft PowerPoint, but written in different ways. So the title says Microsoft, the first occurrence is MS PowerPoint, and then you have all sorts of typos with capitals in the wrong places, etc. Variables are a great way to keep this consistent. Now you can enter variables in different ways. I like to just use the button insert a variable. You have a list of the recently used, and you can even pin variables that you regularly use. You can also just click the button and get an overview of all the variables in your project. I'm going to use presentation tool with the definition PowerPoint. And you see that it automatically takes over the styling of the element that contains the variable. So inside of my variable, I can't change the formatting. I can't make PowerPoint bold in my variable, but my variable itself can be styled in any way as normal paragraphs or headings can. I'll just copy it here and here, and there we are. Now, a very tricky thing is the spacing around variables. It's a typical mistake that you can have because you have this little, because this is code, it doesn't immediately catch the eye that there is a space missing behind it. So I'll just add that here. This is something to watch out for if you use variables. Now, because I use variables, first of all, the name of my product is always consistent, but also if I would decide to change, or if my company decides to change the name of a product, all I need to do is change my variable. So for example, if I want to change the name of Microsoft PowerPoint to Microsoft Power Dot, for example, I just change my variable, save, and everywhere in my project where I use that variable, the content has already changed. So this is a great way of sort of simplifying product names, dates, release versions, etc. Normally, this is all you have to do, okay? In most cases, you will define your variables in your variable set. However, in some cases, you can also decide to overrule your variable set in your target. For example, if you have an HTML target, you can, in your variables section, by default, it will use the same definition as your variable set, but you can deviate from that. For example, I changed the name of Microsoft Excel to X-cell with 3 L's, right? This will only affect this target. So if I look at my Excel topic now, it's still the normal Microsoft Excel as it is in my variable set. However, if I preview this or if I build my HTML topics, you'll see that the content will automatically adapt. A great way of handling, for example, releases. If you have different targets for different releases or different products, you can use variables in targets to sort of overrule the default definition. Let me close this and have a look at my final topic, MS Word. Also here, this is inconsistent. So let's just start typing Microsoft Word. And Flare will automatically make suggestions based on my variables. So this is a great way of sort of being reminded that variables exist that could be relevant for whatever it is that you are typing. I'll just save this. And here we are. This is the very basic stuff about variables. We're going to start adding more content with regards to variables later on, but I first want to show you snippets as well, because they allow me to build on, well, this allows me to sort of introduce condition tags as well. I'll go back to my presentation. Snippets are similar to variables because they also make it easy to reuse and maintain information. It's also a single sourcing mechanism. However, snippets are a lot more elaborate, let's say. Snippets can actually be used as, well, miniature topics. So you can add formatted text, you can add multiple paragraphs, tables, images, anything you can do in a topic, you can also do it in a snippet, okay? Whereas variables are shorter and are plain text. Snippets can be anything you want them to be. You can also insert them into one or more topics, or even inside other snippets. So you can have a snippet consisting of other snippets consisting of other snippets. You can embed them and create a whole layered structure. I think that Collibra, the record is 5 levels of snippets. So snippets containing snippets and snippets and snippets and snippets. Now, when you insert a snippet in a topic, you can enter it as a block snippet with respect for example, paragraphs and tables, etc., or in line, which means that it becomes some sort of a plain text snippet. I'll show you that in the actual presentation, the actual project. So I'm going back to my project, and let's imagine that I want to create a new topic for PowerPoint, for example. I want to create a topic to make text bold in Microsoft PowerPoint. Now I already have a procedure for Word. So what I would do first is I would just copy paste it, change the name, MS PowerPoint, and then make the necessary changes. In this case, all I need to do is change my variables, and that's it. That's all I need to do. This is very quick, right? The only problem is that if I have several topics like this and something changes in my product, so for example, one of the options to make text bold is no longer available, or there is a change, the keyboard shortcut changes, for example, I have to go into every single topic and change it in that topic, which could get messy, especially with new people joining the team or people leaving the team, etc. So what we want to do is we want to single source part of this topic. We want to reuse basically this section. That's where snippets come in. You can use a snippet, put this procedure in the snippet, and then use the snippet wherever you need it. I find the easiest way of creating new snippets is to type in the text as usual, right? And then select the text and click Create Snippet on the Home tab page of the ribbon. You get a dialog box. You can give the new snippet a name, for example, make text bold, and choose a location. By default, snippets will be stored in the resources/snippets folder, but you can put it wherever you want. If you want to keep it closer to your content topics, you can also put it, for example, in the same folder. I'm not going to do that now because I'll get lost and lose my snippets. But you can choose the location freely. You also see that there's a checkbox to automatically replace the source content with a new snippet. I leave that checked. I just click Create. And you see that I now have a snippet block, and I can no longer change the text in my topic here. That's because the topic is actually no longer in this topic. The text is in my snippet. My snippet is in my snippets folder, make text bold. So if I want to make changes to this section, I open the snippet by navigating to it, or also an easy way is right-clicking it, open snippet file, and you have it open in the editor. You see that this is very similar to a normal topic, and I can use whatever function I want similar to topics. I can use styles, headings, tables, images, whatever I need. Now, for my PowerPoint topic, I still have this in plain text. I'm just going to delete this. And now I'm going to insert my snippet. I can do that using the topic toolbar, insert a snippet, or by dragging and dropping. I'll save this. So now I have my topic, make text bold in PowerDot, because I changed the name. And I have this snippet in multiple topics. So in my Word and in my PowerPoint. If I want to make any changes to this procedure, I can open the snippet. And for example, I'll type the keyboard shortcut, I'll use press. If I save this in my snippet and I go to my topics, you'll see that they're all updated, just like that. So I centralize basically a piece of information and I insert that wherever I need it. The big advantage is that this remains consistent, and whatever I need to do to maintain it, I can do it in this one place. Obviously, you have to kind of have a system to name the snippets, because I know that in our project, we have probably around 400 snippets in a very complicated folder structure. It's hard to remember what is put where, which snippets are available, is there anything relevant for the topic I'm writing right now? So having a good naming convention makes sense, and having a decent folder structure in the snippets folder will help there as well. And if you don't know where the snippet is, just navigate to any topic containing the snippet and open the snippet file here. I'm going to close some of my, close all but this, some of the files that are open, and I'm going to go back to my PowerPoint slide. So the big advantage is content reuse, consistent information. However, that's also the major downside, because snippets are fixed content. They are basically a piece of information that you reuse wherever you need it. But sometimes you don't want it to be exactly the same, but just very similar. For example, what if I want to talk about making things bold in MS Excel? Because in Excel, you don't really have text, you have cells. You don't have a mini toolbar, for example. I can still click bold. The keyboard shortcut will work. But in Excel, for example, I could also use a macro, a visual basic macro. So I want to reuse a certain section, but I also want to sort of deviate from it in certain cases. I'm going to show you how to do that later on, because this is actually why condition tags can be useful. I'm sure most of you already use condition tags to some extent. Condition tags are essentially markers. They're tags. You can apply them to text strings, paragraphs, hyperlinks, anything you can select in MadCap Flare, basically. Know that by default, they don't have any effect. A condition tag is just some metadata that you add in your topic, but they don't do anything. You can obviously use them, but you need this tag expression. You need to explain to Flare, to a target, to a snippet, what this tag actually means, how you want to use it. So whenever you start conditioning text, you start adding these condition tags, you have to think about how you want to use this. Do you want to exclude content, or do you want to include certain pieces of information, etc.? Now, condition tags are incredibly powerful, but they're not always easy, especially if you start combining condition tags. Having basically binary condition tags, for example, HTML or PDF only, is pretty straightforward. But as soon as you have multiple targets, multiple products, etc., things quickly get more complicated. I'll start off with the easy bit, obviously. The basic use of condition tags would be based on your target, for example, HTML only or PDF only content. Similar to variables, you define your condition tags in a set in your project settings. So this is an example of HTML only and print only tags, which I can then use in a topic. So for example, this is for HTML output or a hyperlink or whatever. This is PDF output. Now I put my condition tag on my entire P element. I could also highlight individual words, for example, images, tables, etc. Now, in my topic by default, nothing will happen because my topic is my topic. Everything is in there. If I have a look at my target, by default, all content is included, regardless of tags. You have to explain to Flare what you want Flare to do with this condition tag. For example, this is out of the box. I created my condition tags. I marked some content with that condition tag. But as you can see, Flare will automatically include everything, unless I change the tag expression to exclude certain content. So for example, this would allow me to exclude content marked for print only. Everything else, everything that does not have the print only condition tag, will still be included. This is pretty straightforward, but there's a second unless square, as you will. If you also include content, it's important to remember that include trumps exclude. Now, in a binary situation like this, that doesn't matter that much because I don't have content that is marked with both condition tags. But I'll give you some examples later on where you have content that has maybe 2 condition tags or 3 condition tags out of a condition tag set of 6 or 7 conditions. And then it's important to realize that if you exclude a certain tag, everything with that tag will be excluded. Also content that should be included based on another tag. And that's when you need this include action, okay? Let me go back to my project and show you live. So I'll go to my concept topic for Word, and I'll add something very typical for HTML output, which is for more information, click here. Very handy. Obviously, for print, that would be impossible and a bit weird. So we'll add a second paragraph for more information. Visit www. Let's just say word.com. I don't want both of these paragraphs in my output. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create condition tags, mark this text with the appropriate condition tag, and then tell my targets which condition tags I want. So I go to my project organizer. I go to my condition text, conditional text. There's my default condition tag set. I'll open it. And you see that I already have my HTML only and my print only tags. I can easily add new ones or remove them. The background color will not be used anywhere outside of Flare. This is just for your own convenience. I like to use very different colors, light green and dark green, for example. That would be a bit pointless, but green and blue and red and orange, they all work fine. So I have my condition tags. I'm going back to my topic. I'm going to select my entire paragraph. And now I can click conditions on the home tab page of the ribbon. I go to the condition tag set of my condition, and I'll say this is HTML only. Okay. For more information, visit this. I'll press Control-Shift-T, bring up the same dialog box and say that this is print only. Okay. Save. My topic contains both paragraphs, and my target has to differentiate between them. By default, it won't. This is my HTML5 target, but I see both strings. I see both my paragraphs. So I'll go to my target, go to the conditional text, and here you see that by default, Flare will include everything. It won't differentiate between print and HTML. However, if I exclude print only, then I save. And now I go back to my Microsoft Word topic and I preview. You see that I don't have my for more information, visit www, etc. anymore. If I go to PDF, you see that I have my full URL here. This is because my conditional expression here includes print, but excludes HTML only. I'll close this, and here we are. So this is the basic usage of condition tags. I did this in a P tag, in a P element, but we also use this, for example, in procedures, in list items. We use this a lot. For example, the installation procedure of our platform may be different for Windows-based operating system compared to Linux-based or Mac OS-based. So we have one big procedure, but we will differentiate with condition tags and then publish depending on that condition tag, depending on the operating system, will determine which condition tags we want to include or exclude. So this is the normal usage. I told you earlier that we're going to do something else. We're also going to look at snippets, and we're going to use condition tags inside our snippets as well, because we don't always want to filter on our targets. We also want to filter sometimes on certain topics or even on individual snippets, which of the content that we want to show in certain situations. This is a little bit more advanced, but I'm sure that you'll manage this. So let's go back to the presentation. Here we are. So you can also use snippets. You can also use conditions inside snippets, and then let the snippet block determine which content you want to show. This is my snippet that I created earlier for making text bold. Now, inside that snippet, I can mark certain list items, certain strings, etc., with a certain condition tag. And obviously, I'm not going to create different targets for this. I'm not going to create a different target for Microsoft Word and for Excel and PowerPoint, but I'm going to filter basically in my snippet, in my product-specific snippet. And this will lead to different content, different topics, even though they reuse the same snippet. Okay, this is a screenshot of two different topics using the same snippet, but using different snippet conditions. Let's go back to the project and show you live. I'm going to open my snippet file. And now I'm going to add information that's also relevant for Excel, because I also want to add a topic on making cells bold in Excel. So I'm going to mark certain piece of information as Word and PowerPoint only. This is just another condition tag set that I created earlier. Technically, it's exactly the same as any other snippet condition tag. I put it in a subfolder called snippet conditions because I really want to make sure that I keep them separate from my target conditions. You don't want to start mixing those. I think it's best that you differentiate your condition tag sets based on where you want to use them, either in the target or as snippet conditions. So that's what I did here earlier. So text that's relevant for PowerPoint and Word. But for Excel, I want this to read cell. So I'm going to add cell as well and mark this as Excel only. You see that everything is in my topic. You see that these sections have a certain condition tag. I can also apply this, for example, to an entire list item. Move your pointer to the mini toolbar. Well, this doesn't exist in Excel. So I'll add a condition tag to this list item and say this is Word and PowerPoint. I'm also going to add a new one, which is unique to Excel, which is use a Visual Basics macro, for example. I'll mark this as Excel only. There we are. The other two, it's best that you do not mark them at all in that case. You could also select everything to sort of emphasize that it's relevant for everything. Typically, I tend not to do this because this will mess up your conditional expressions with the includes and the excludes. This might get you into trouble later on. I'll do it for now because maybe I shouldn't only give good examples, but also a bad example every once in a while. I'll show you what potential issues you could have with this. I'll click OK. and save. Now, because I changed my snippet, all the topics that contain the snippet, they contain everything. They now say select a text cell. They contain information that's not relevant for Word. So this is a tricky situation. This is something you want to avoid. And this is true for every topic that contains the snippet. Make text bold here. So for my PowerPoint or Power Dot topics, you see everything as well. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a conditional expression on my snippet block directly. So I'm going to tell Flare here in this topic for this snippet block only, I want to use a filter. I want to use conditional expressions to do that. I just right click my snippet block. Don't use conditions because this will apply a new condition tag to your snippet block, but click snippet conditions. Snippet conditions will bring up a new dialog box, and here you can define your conditional expression. In the case of PowerPoint, I could say that I want to include only PowerPoint, and you'll see that Flare automatically sort of implicitly excludes the other condition tags in this set, right? So if I include PowerPoint, it will exclude everything marked as Excel and Word. I click OK. And you see that I have my mini toolbar, I have bold, I don't have my Visual Basics strategy anymore, and I don't see cell here. I'm going to do the same for Word. I'm going to apply snippet condition. I could also do the opposite. I could exclude everything that's not relevant. So I could say exclude Excel and exclude PowerPoint, and then implicitly include Word. If I do this and I click OK, all the content marked as Excel or PowerPoint will be excluded. So you see, I only have one strategy now. The reason for this is that some of the strategies were actually marked as relevant for Word and PowerPoint. But because I exclude everything relevant for PowerPoint, these sort of double strategies are also excluded. So if you want to exclude content, make sure you also explicitly include it. Now you see it again. Now you see that move your pointer and click bold, etc. Everything is back. Be very careful with that. Check, and double check. It's fairly straightforward to test this when you set it up. So the first time you want to get everything in order, that's fine. It gets more tricky if you start adding new products, for example. So Access would be an example, or other Microsoft products, because then the snippet is already in 5, 6, 7, maybe 20 topics with condition expressions that you all have to edit that and keep that in sync. That can be challenging. Okay, it happened a couple of times to me as well, that I thought I checked everything, but I missed one. And then there's one topic that still says select the cell text that you want to make bold, for example. So be careful with that. I'm going to create a new topic here for Excel. So I'm just going to copy paste this. I'm going to call this MS Excel. Excel make cell bold. Make text bold in Microsoft Excel, in Microsoft Excel. Now, because I copy pasted the topic, the condition tag, which is visualized here as well, is also copied, right? So at this point, the snippet conditions still say show stuff that's relevant for PowerPoint. I'm going to change this. I'm going to right click, snippet conditions, and I'm going to say, no, I want to include everything that's relevant for Excel. Okay, here we are. I'll save this. Make text bold. Select the cell that you want to make bold. Click the bold button, press the keyboard shortcut, or use the Visual Basics macro. Remember, this is still this one snippet that I created, but rather than just adding text that I want to use consistently everywhere, I added condition tags. And then on my topics, I said, I want these condition tags to be applied. I want this content to be shown, and I want this content to be hidden. This is really powerful, especially for content that is almost the same, but not exactly the same. In our platform, for example, we talk about relation types, and we also have complex relation types. Now, 99% of the content is the same, but then we have very unique special things that apply only to complex relation types. So we would mark the steps, the remarks, the tips, the notes, etc., with a condition tag in a snippet, use a snippet throughout our project, but then use conditional expressions to sort of avoid the complex piece of information where necessary. I'm just going to save all and go back. So now I have 3 procedures: Excel, PowerPoint, and Word, each using the same snippet, but adapting the content based on these condition tags. I'm going to take it even one step further. I'm also going to show you that you can do the same thing with variables. So remember, variables were typically created and defined centrally, and then you could, if you want to, override it on the target, but you can also do the same thing on a snippet level. You can use a variable in a snippet, and then in your snippet block, you can override it. So in your snippet block, you can sort of redefine a variable where you want it. So for example, this is my make text bold snippet again in Microsoft Office, which is a very generic title. And then I can make this Microsoft Word, Excel, wherever I want it, based on my snippet variables. Let me show you again in the project. I'm going back to my snippet. Make text bold in. Now I need a variable that already exists. So if I don't have one, I still need to create one. I already had my suite variable defined as Microsoft Office. That will do fine. So I'll call this Microsoft Office. Here we are. And save. Now by default, if I don't change anything, all my snippets will mention make text bold in Microsoft Office, make text bold in Microsoft Office. It's not wrong because it's a more generic term, but maybe I want to make it even more adaptable. So I'm going to do the same thing as with snippet conditions. I'm going to right click, and instead of clicking snippet conditions, I click snippet variables. Here I can overwrite the default definition of my variable. So now suite is defined as Microsoft Office. I'm going to make this Microsoft Word. Click OK. And here I am. Make text bold in Microsoft Word. I'm going to do the same thing for Excel. Snippet variables. My suite becomes Excel. And in PowerPoint, I'm going to do the same thing. Okay, and save. I now have, oh yeah, this is because I defined that centrally. I'll just make this consistent as a dot as well. There we are. So I still have this one snippet, but wherever I use it it looks unique. It always adapts to the topic which contains the snippet. So my topic, my snippet block in my topic will determine which condition tags I want to include and exclude. And at the same time, it will tell me how to redefine the variables. This is all done in the XML editor. For those of you who prefer to work in a text editor, this is always also defined, well, coded in the XML. So you see this is your snippet block, where it is, and then you have your condition tag expressions. So if you want to change it, you could also type it in here, for example, or the MadCap snippet variables element will allow you to override it also in the text editor. Here we are, and save. This is something that we do a lot. For example, in our tool, we talk a lot about assets. Now you can create an asset, which is a very generic thing. In some cases, we know which type of asset you want to create. So instead of saying create an asset, we'll say create a business term, create a column, create a table asset. And this is all done by means of these variables. We have a default variable, which is asset, but then depending on the topic, if we want to specialize that term, we'll override it in the snippet block to say create a business term where needed. And if then we change the procedure, every topic that reuses this snippet will stay consistent. And that makes everything very, very manageable, especially in a big project. I think we're at close to 2,000 topics. This is really handy. So this is the advanced use of variables inside snippets. I'm going to show you some more use cases as well. For example, we also could talk about one topic for MS Word that contains all the layouts, so all the formatting options. We also want to have, for example, a topic for making text italics, right? So then I could go to my snippet, copy paste it in this case. I'll rename it. I'll call it italicize text. I'll change the content as well, italicize text in Microsoft Office that you want to italicize and do the following: click italics, click italics, Control I to let's make up a new word, unitalicize the text. Now, I can very quickly create a new topic now. Oops, I copy pasted the wrong topic. To italicize text in Word. MS Word, italicize text. Italicize text. All I need to do now is replace the snippet. I'm going to right click it and click select new snippet, italicize text. And here we are. I now have a topic for making text. Oh, italicizing, I still have to change the title, italicize text, and make your text, italicize your text in several ways. So all I did now was copy paste my topic because my conditional expression is still valid. Everything works out fine. So this would work exactly the same if I did the same for Excel. Everything would still work. For PowerPoint, everything would still work. Let's take it even one step further. Let's try and create a topic that says MS Word apply formatting. I want to create one topic which contains both. So I'll create make text bold and italicize text. I can either choose to do this on every single snippet block. I can add new snippet conditions, snippet variables, etc. But this could take me a while. Okay, I prefer to do this once and then basically get it over with, so that in this one topic, all my snippet blocks remain consistent. Also, thinking of the future, I now have a topic, apply formatting in Microsoft Word. I'll probably want the same thing for PowerPoint, Excel, etc. So what I really want to do is I want to snippetize this as well. I'll create a snippet called format text, and then I'll insert my snippets in another snippet, just like this. And instead of inserting each snippet individually, I'm going to insert my sort of parent snippet. Now I have one snippet containing two snippets. If I want to apply the snippet conditions and snippet variables on this level, it will be tricky because snippet conditions won't work on embedded snippets. So if I do the same as usual, I include my word tags, nothing seems to happen. That's because the snippets are embedded in another snippet. So I'll just change the same setting in my topic properties. I go to snippet conditions and I change it here. If I change it here, it will be applied to all snippets in my topic, and it will also work for snippets inside of other snippets. So I applied it to my topic, and now you see that I only see the relevant strategies in my snippet. Same thing applies to my variable. I'll define my variable here. So I'll say I want this to be Microsoft Word. There you are, Microsoft Word. So I'm reusing two snippets for my specific topics, italicize and make text, and I'm reusing the same snippet in another topic that sort of covers everything. This is very handy for sort of sub-procedures. For example, open a Word file could be a separate topic, but it could also be the first step in a bigger topic. A last use case that I want to show you is tables, which in our case is very often used. I have a table that contains a list of all the presidents of the United States since apparently the 18th century. Now, I have 3 columns: the name of the president, the party he belonged to, and the election in which he became president. Now, I also have the presidents based on the century that they had their presidency. So I have the 18th, 19th, 20th, and 21st century. Now, this is one table, but maybe I don't always want to show the entire table, but I want to reuse this one table, but maybe I want a topic that only contains the presidents of the 20th century and their parties. And I want to exclude the election year, for example, and I want to exclude certain the centuries that I'm not interested in. So this works in exactly the same way. I have my condition tags in order, snippet conditions, president century, president's columns. I apply this in my table, and then I use a snippet condition to determine what I want to see. So in this case, I include the 20th century, and I exclude everything else, and I exclude the election column, but include the party column. If I want to reuse this snippet somewhere else, I can just, for example, say I want to include the 18th century and exclude the 20th, and that's it. This allows me to single source a table. For an application like ours, this is fantastic because we integrate with many data sources. For example, PostgreSQL, Oracle DB. We also integrate with data intelligence solutions such as Tableau, Power BI, Looker, etc. So we have a table with the name of the data source, the supported versions of the data source, then the driver versions that we have, and then other columns that show basically how well this data source is supported with regards to, for example, sampling, advanced data type protection, etc. We have one table that gives us the overview in which we can easily spot missing information, and then we reuse that table wherever we need it and filter out the relevant content based on these condition tags. This is our main use case, along with procedures in which we filter out certain steps. That is what I wanted to show you. Also, don't forget, if you don't remember everything I said or you don't want to listen to the entire webinar again, this is documented very well by MadCap itself. So I'll share this PowerPoint presentation with everyone. We'll update the links to point to the latest version, 2019 R2. I think the tech writers at MadCap do a really good job explaining this and making it interactive. And I bet that they use a lot of snippets there as well and a lot of conditions for their PDF materials and web materials as well. That's all I have for you today. Jenny?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Ken. That was fantastic. One generated a very lively discussion and some fantastic questions. I want to commend the audience for their great questions. One slide I want to just remind everybody before we get to a couple, because we won't be able to get to all of them today, but don't worry, we're going to send a follow-up document and take some time to answer all of these for you. Just want to remind everybody, if you're a trial user or a current customer, you have access to our free introductory training course. We have actually added a few more courses now through the end of May. We realize a lot of folks are remote, so it's a good opportunity to continue learning. So if you're a newer user to Flare, if you've got new members on your team, you can view the full schedule online and sign up for free. We cover the basics of snippets, conditions, and variables in this free course. So if you're fairly new and you want to get the basics down and become proficient in that, I would encourage you to look at the curriculum. Hopefully you can join a class that works for you. Our next one's going to be Thursday, April 9th, and it's a live training, so we are together most of the day. So do check that. I would encourage you, if you haven't taken that class, to do that, because it's free if you're trialing or if you're a user. So free is good. Okay, so we've got a couple minutes I want to take there. Again, we're not going to get to all of the questions, but I was sort of looking at a few that came in multiple times, or some comments that came in multiple times. So I'd like to just start with that. A few comments / questions, Ken. Some folks commented that they liked the conditional markers that you were showing on your topics, and some folks commented that they don't exactly see the same thing. Perhaps if they put a condition tag on a word, for example, there's no color, and you've got some nice colors there. I was hoping that maybe perhaps you could show at the very bottom of the editor just a tip that you may want to turn your conditional indicators on in the editor, and that may be part of the reason. So at the very bottom of the XML editor, oh yeah, it's there too, perfect. So it's from the little eyeball, or there's a little button at the very bottom of the XML editor that lets you turn those conditional indicators on. So toggling those on and off will make your XML editor look a little bit different. So if you're looking at this saying, gosh, I apply a condition tag to a word and I don't see it light up, it may be that that indicator is turned off. So something to think about there. I just wanted to point that out. Thank you for showing that, because that came up a couple times. Another good question, just to kind of repeat, because again, you went in with the advanced conditions on snippets and variables, if you're not used to using them, sometimes they can be a little bit of a mind bender. But a great question came in that maybe we could talk about is, for conditions, you used snippet conditions versus regular conditions. Why? I have regular conditions and topics and snippets. So I thought maybe you could kind of delineate again the difference between the two, just to kind of differentiate why you would want to use one or the other.
Yeah. Well, technically, they're exactly the same thing, right? So there is no difference in snippet condition sets compared to sort of target condition sets. However, this is mainly a matter of overview, because imagine that you apply certain condition tags to a snippet here, and then you use snippet conditions to filter out certain content, and then you have a TOC. So I'm going to my table of contents now. And in my table of contents, I insert this groups. For example, what some of these topics. Here you are. And now the target that uses this topic group, if that also has these includes and excludes, it's gonna be pretty messy, because if I now say, okay, I want to publish something only for Word, and I say include here, and I say, okay, but then I don't want my PowerPoint, I don't want my Excel, you're going to get confused and you might get some very funky results, okay? This is mainly a matter of keeping the overview, keep seeing the forest through the trees, because trust me, after a while, if you get over 200 condition tags, you're gonna be in trouble if you don't clearly differentiate between your target condition tags and your snippet condition tags. If you want to make sure, if you want to check where you use certain condition tags, it's also a very handy approach to view the links. So we like to use many condition tag sets rather than pushing them all into one of them, because then we can view the links and you can see which topics and which files actually make use of these condition tags. There's also a report in the analyzer that specifically shows you the files with snippet conditions. So this all allows you to sort of filter and retrieve certain snippet conditions and condition expressions that you may have put or may have forgotten to put somewhere. I hope that answers your question.
That's great. Another quick one, just to kind of tie into the indicator, it also came up a couple times. Is there a visual cue or a sort of a clue when we're applying those snippet conditions specifically on the block? Can you point out, a couple folks wondered about, well, how do we know if there's actually snippet conditions applied? And there's a little visual indicator. Perhaps we could just point that out real quick, because that came up a couple times, which can be helpful.
Here it is. This little icon here, this indicates that there's a snippet condition. For example, if I add the same snippet again to this topic, and I'll just say italicize, for example, you see the difference is this icon here. This quickly shows you, okay, there's a logic in this snippet. This is a plain snippet, which doesn't have the icon. This has this sort of this flag, as you will.
Great. Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. It's a great question. We didn't talk about, global project linking today, but a few folks asked about, how do these things work, and is it possible to have, I don't know if you use this at Collibra, perhaps a global project that shares, where child projects may share a common group of variables. Do you ever use that in your practice?
We don't use that currently, because we have this one sort of master project from which we publish all our user guides. You could do that, but keep in mind, if you start defining your variables and your conditions in another project, you have to remember to re-import things, etc. It's a matter of consistency and how close you want your condition tag sets and variable sets to your actual content. I think this would work for general company information, for example. The registered office and the company name, etc. But I think for condition tags and variables like what I use, especially for topic-based and snippet variables and conditions, I prefer to keep that closer to my content.
Yeah.
It's a matter of organization and personal preference.
Great. Well,
one usual.
go ahead.
Sorry. One last thing. Usually, what I also get asked is, yeah, but how does this work with regards to localization? Because if I send this to my translator, select the text cell, he'll get confused, and I bet he will, because this doesn't make a lot of sense if you don't know what condition tags are. If you want to localize your user guide, your Flare project, I would first of all highly recommend you use Lingo to produce the XLIF files for the translator, or you can also export your project. And when you export the project, I'll just save this, you can choose to flatten this as well. So if you convert variables and snippets to text, this will actually become plain text and you won't see all the possible tagged content. So this is also something you have to take into consideration.
That's a great point.
I interrupted you.
No, that's a fantastic point. We had some questions about, you read my mind, so that was perfect. I'm looking at the time and we want to be respectful since we have folks all over the world joining, including you, Ken. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it. I'm sorry that we didn't get to every single question, but you have some great ones on here. As I mentioned, we're going to follow up. So we'll keep this open for another minute or so. So if you have any last minute questions for Ken, go ahead and drop them in. And as I mentioned, we're going to follow up with the webinar recording, the slides, all of the resources, and that question and answer document after we have a chance to go through and answer everything in more detail. So Ken, I want to thank you for taking the time today, and for our wonderful audience for their great questions and their participation. Thank you. And we just want to remind everybody that, you know, here at MadCap, we're keeping everybody's health and wellness in concern, and we're wishing everybody well in these crazy times. We're going to keep the webinar content, the blog content, and the training content going. It's a great time to learn remotely, as many of us are. So we hope to see you on another webinar, perhaps in one of our new intro training classes coming up that we've just scheduled. And do keep in touch with us, as we are here to help you. So thanks again, Ken. Thank you, everybody who attended, and definitely stay safe out there. And we hope to see you on the next webinar. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.